Have you ever noticed that you can tell exactly how someone is feeling just by the way they close the front door? You didn't even see their face, but you already know if you need to be helpful, if you need to be quiet, or if you need to disappear entirely. Most people call this being perceptive or highly intuitive. But often, it isn't a gift you were born with. It's a skill you had to learn. When we talk about childhood trauma, we tend to look for the big, dramatic events, the things that make for a movie script. But for many of us, trauma isn't a single explosion. It's the atmosphere we grew up in. It's the silent adjustments we made to survive an environment that felt unpredictable, cold, or overwhelming. And the thing about these survival strategies is that they don't just go away because you grew up and moved out. They stay. They become your personality. They become the you that you present to the world, without you ever realizing that the person you think you are is actually a collection of sophisticated defense mechanisms. One of the most common ways this shows up in adult life is through something we might call the invisible radar. If you grew up in a home where a parent's mood could shift at any moment, you became an expert at reading the room. You learned to scan faces for the slightest twitch of a muscle. You learned to decode the specific silence of a room. In your adult life, this looks like being the person who is always on. You're the one who notices when a coworker is slightly annoyed before they even realize it themselves. You're the one who overanalyzes a 3-word text message for hours, looking for the hidden rejection between the lines. To the outside world, you're just considerate. But internally, you're exhausted because your brain is still operating on the old logic that if you can just predict the danger, you can prevent the pain. It's not about being social. It's about maintaining emotional safety. Then there is the need to be useful. You might notice that you struggle to feel like you belong in a group unless you are doing something for them. You're the one who cleans up after the party, the one who handles everyone's problems, the reliable one who never says no. This often stems from a childhood where love was conditional. You weren't valued for just existing. You were valued for what you provided, whether that was being the emotional support for a parent, the high-achieving student who brought home the trophies, or the easy child who never made a fuss. As an adult, you might find that you don't actually know how to exist in a relationship without being a fixer. The moment you aren't being useful, you feel an underlying sense of anxiety, a fear that if you stop performing, people will realize there's no reason to keep you around. Your identity has become fused with your utility. And here's where it gets interesting. Most people think these traits, the overthinking, the people-pleasing, the hypervigilance, are signs that something is wrong with them. They see it as a lack of confidence or a personality flaw. But the real reason isn't a lack of strength. It's an excess of it. These behaviors aren't failures. They are evidence of how incredibly well you adapted to a situation that was too big for you to handle as a child. If you didn't have a safe place to land, you learned how to fly. If no one was watching out for you, you learned how to watch out for everyone. The flaw isn't the behavior itself. The conflict arises because you are using a 10-year-old's survival kit to navigate a 30-year-old's life. You're still wearing the armor, even though the war ended a long time ago. This brings us to a pattern that is often mislabeled as perfectionism. We often think of perfectionists as people who are driven by a high standard of excellence. But often, adult perfectionism is actually a form of control. If you grew up in chaos, whether that was physical chaos, financial instability, or emotional volatility, you learned that the world is an unsafe, unpredictable place. As an adult, you might find yourself obsessing over small details or feeling a sense of mounting panic when things don't go according to plan. It's not that you need things to be perfect, it's that you need things to be controlled. Because in your mind, controlled equals safe. If you can control your environment, your output, and how people perceive you, then nothing can hurt you. The tragedy of this pattern is that it keeps you from ever being truly known. If you only show the world your polished, perfect side, then any love or praise you receive doesn't feel real. It feels like it belongs to the mask, not to you. You might also notice a deep-seated habit of staying quiet. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you learned early on that your needs were a burden. In a household where there was only enough room for one person's emotions, usually a parent's, you learn to shrink. You learn to swallow your anger, your sadness, and even your joy so as not to take up too much space. As an adult, this shows up as a strange kind of invisibility. You might find yourself in a relationship for years without ever truly expressing a preference for what to eat, where to live, or how you want to be treated. It's not that you're chill or easygoing, it's that you're still waiting for permission to exist. You've become a master at anticipating what others want so that you never have to risk the rejection of wanting something for yourself. The impact of these patterns on your identity is profound. It can feel like you're a ghost in your own life, watching yourself perform these roles, watching yourself please people you don't even like, and wondering why you feel so empty despite doing everything right. But there is power in simply seeing the pattern. When you realize that your tendency to over-explain isn't a character defect, but a habit born from being constantly misunderstood as a child, it changes how you look at yourself. When you see that your inability to relax isn't laziness or poor time management, but a nervous system that was trained to stay on high alert for decades, the self-criticism starts to lose its grip. The truth is, these behaviors served you once. They kept you safe. They got you through the door and into adulthood. They are not who you are, but they are a part of the story of how you survived. And that awareness alone is where the shift begins. Once you see the invisible radar for what it is, you can start to notice when it's humming in the background. You can start to realize that the footsteps in the hallway today don't mean what they meant 20 years ago. It was never random. It was a pattern. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That awareness doesn't fix everything overnight, but it does something more important. It gives you back your identity. It allows you to stop being a collection of reactions and start being a person. Understanding yourself is the beginning of everything. And if this explains something for you, there's more to uncover.